Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakio. Thanks for joining me for this evening's Dharma Sunday, where we take canonical Buddhist teachings and tie them with everyday life. The title of today's talk is Afghanistan Troop Withdrawal, or Buddhism's Theology of Lament. Before we get into that, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be great too. 11 years ago, I was serving in the U.S. Marines, and I was serving in Afghanistan. And I had the great honor and privilege of serving with some of the smartest, strongest, most capable men and women I've ever met in my entire life. I and they sacrificed weddings, funerals, jobs. Some people missed the birth of their children in order to be there to go on that deployment, but we did it, and we did it gladly because we believed that we were making the world a better place. Our leaders told us that we were bringing democracy to a part of the world that had only known feudalism, that we were bringing light into the darkness. So that being the case, all these years later, I had a lot of emotions when I heard about the US's withdrawal from Afghanistan. And also a lot of feelings when I read the reports that the Taliban, which is a terrorist network, was retaking the country of Afghanistan and eventually took over the whole thing. So the government we put in place has collapsed, and the Taliban now has the country. What to do? So first, I'd like to read 2 articles, as I normally do, about the subject, and then after that, I will tell you a little bit about what Buddhism has to say about situations like this, and how I'm using Buddhism to cope with the current state of affairs. Our first article comes from Time magazine. It's at time.com. The title is Joe Biden's Botched Withdrawal Plunges Afghanistan into Chaos. It looks like it was written by W.J. Hinnigan and Kimberly Dozier. In early July, President Joe Biden informed the American people of the coming withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan after a 20-year occupation. The evacuation would be secure and orderly, he said, with little chance of a Taliban takeover. The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely, he said. A little more than a month later, Biden has been proven wrong on all accounts. The Taliban took over Afghanistan on Sunday, entering the capital city of Kabul with no resistance after a 2-week-long blitz in which multiple provincial capitals fell into the insurgents' hands. President Ashraf Ghani fled the country on Sunday, abandoning his fortress-like palace to the black turban militants who roamed freely in his offices by the day's end. U.S. diplomats, meanwhile, rushed to destroy sensitive documents and equipment at the sprawling U.S. embassy. The building's American flag was lowered and flown aboard a helicopter to the Kabul airport, where U.S. personnel gathered for safety. Like a long-anticipated death, Americans knew this day would come, but the collapse was so sudden and complete that it was stunning when it finally did. It's a reality difficult to fathom after nearly 2 decades of U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. More than 2,300 of its troops dead, more than 20,000 wounded, hundreds of thousands of Afghans maimed or killed, and $2 trillion spent on the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks this September. A Taliban flag will fly over Afghanistan. Biden's miscalculation could alter his presidency and weaken U.S. standing overseas. He supported the invasion 2 decades ago, but had long since concluded it was time to leave, and he got elected to the presidency on a platform of pulling troops out. So how could the White House have been caught so flat-footed? Biden administration officials routinely argued that Afghanistan's 300,000 plus troops and police, which the U.S. had spent at least $84 billion to train and equip, vastly outnumbered the estimated 75,000 Taliban fighters. They pointed to Afghanistan's Air Force of attack planes and helicopters, which were also paid for by the U.S., as well as the firepower and heavy weaponry. To the end, though, not one piece of this multi-billion-dollar arsenal, which now all belongs to the Taliban, could replace the willingness to fight or the instinct for survival, as Afghan troops saw that fellow soldiers who surrendered to the militants were allowed to live, and those who fought were often brutally executed. U.S. intelligence assessments initially estimated that Afghan security forces could stave off Taliban offensives against major population centers like Kabul for a year or possibly more. Just this month, the timetable was significantly downgraded to within 30 days or less, according to 2 current U.S. officials. Instead, Afghan defenses lasted 10 days, as the troops repeatedly acquiesced to the insurgents, allowing them to walk through Kabul's city gates untouched. The U.S. is now working through the logistical nightmare of evacuating thousands of American and Afghan personnel along with their families. The airport represents the sole means of escape since the Taliban has methodically encircled the capital and cut off critical supply routes in and out of the city. Taliban spokesmen have repeated that anyone who wants to leave can unmolested, but few Afghans want to test that public promise with their lives, as sporadic gunfire and looting has broken out across Kabul overnight. Biden ordered thousands of U.S. forces to the Kabul airport to help evacuate Americans and Afghans who collaborated closely with the U.S. for decades. Congressional lawmakers were told Sunday during a 45-minute conference call with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that the first of 6,000 U.S. troops began to arrive at the Kabul airport over the weekend. Lawmakers were told there were tens of thousands of Afghans who could qualify for special immigrant visas, according to a person familiar with the call. General Kenneth McKenzie, commander of U.S. military operations in the Middle East, is now overseeing the evolving situation from a base in the region. A U.S. military official tells Time they are working to safely evacuate Americans and as many Afghans as possible who might be at risk of Taliban reprisals. Meanwhile, Afghan officials outside the country are working to get out their colleagues who might face retribution if they were left behind. One in the Gulf is working to bring a plane from Qatar to pick up senior Afghan government staffers and some of their families, but by a late Sunday, commercial flights at the city's airport were suspended, and intermittent gunfire and only military aircraft were allowed to operate. A lot of dignitaries were stuck in the airport like sitting ducks, the official says. There's no immigration officer to stamp passports. It's total chaos. The official shared with Time a cell phone video he got from a friend trying to get out at the airport of panicked Afghans rushing to board an empty aircraft, not waiting for permission, standing in the aisles and refusing to give up their seats to the ticketed passengers, with reports of gunshots and militants on the civilian side of the airport. The senior Afghan officials are torn. We don't know if it's a wise decision to sit in the airport, but they fear for their lives if they go back to the city, the official says. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said U.S. forces have now assumed responsibilities for air traffic control at the airport. Commercial traffic continues, though it has experienced some sporadic stoppages and delay, he said in a statement. Several hundred civilians, including personnel and private U.S. citizens, have been evacuated so far, We continue to build capacity to expedite processing for at-risk Afghan civilians. Other senior Afghan officials have opted to stay. An aide of Dr. Abdullah, chairman of the country's High Council for National Reconciliation, tells Time that he will be flying to Doha, Qatar as part of a team that includes former Afghan President Hamid Karzai to negotiate the shape of the incoming government. U.S. and Taliban officials did not respond to requests for comments. Foreign enemies of the Taliban, like Afghan Vice President Amrullah Saleh and Ahmad Massoud, the son of assassinated Northern Alliance leader Ahmad Shah Massoud, have remained in the country, returning to their home province of the Panjshir, multiple current and Afghan officials say. Saleh messaged Time that he is in one of his mountain bases. Ghani, for his part, posted a statement on Facebook that detailed his reasons for fleeing. If I had stayed, countless countrymen would have been martyred and Kabul city would have been ruined, in which case a disaster would have been brought upon the city of 5 million. Meanwhile, the situation is perilous for everyday Afghans who don't have the means or connections to leave. U.S. officials who worked in Afghanistan are getting panicked messages from Afghan translators and other staff who weren't granted U.S. visas in time or couldn't get to the airport, where U.S. officials are trying to rush through thousands of applications before sending them on to Qatar for further security checks and processing. I'm still out here and waiting for the U.S. to save me, one Afghan messaged a long-serving U.S. official. How do you respond to messages like this? The officials asked. I've been getting them all day. And there's a few more paragraphs. Actually, there's one more paragraph. The United States' longest war may be drawing to an end, but the bloodshed is far from over. The world's focus will be on the safety of Afghan allies and Afghan women who were systematically victimized under the Taliban. Biden, however, figured this into his calculation long ago. Do I bear responsibility? Zero responsibility, he told CBS in February 2020, of the possibility women would lose rights under a new Taliban rule. The responsibility I have is to protect America's national self-interest and not put our women and men in harm's way to try to solve every single problem in the world by use of force. So that is what Times had to say. So in the interest of time, I'm only going to read a few paragraphs of the next article. It comes from pbs.org, but it's titled, Taliban Sweep into Afghan Capital After Government Collapses. And it doesn't have a byline. Associated Press. Kabul, Afghanistan, the Taliban swept into Afghanistan's capital Sunday after the government collapsed and the embattled president joined an exodus of his fellow citizens and foreigners, signaling the end of a costly 2-decade U.S. campaign to remake the country. Heavily armed Taliban fighters fanned out across the capital, and several entered Kabul's abandoned presidential palace. Suhail Shaheen, a Taliban spokesman and negotiator, told the Associated Press that the militants would hold talks in the coming days aimed at forming an open, inclusive Islamic government. Earlier, a Taliban official said the group would announce from the palace the restoration of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, the formal name of the country under Taliban rule before the militants were ousted by U.S.-led forces in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, which were orchestrated by al-Qaeda while it was being sheltered by the Taliban, but that plan appeared to be on hold. And it goes on, but it essentially says the same thing as the last essay, which is that the U.S. is pulling out of Afghanistan. The Taliban, which was ousted 20 years ago when it was found that they were harboring Osama bin Laden, who was responsible for the 9/11 attacks, has retaken the city. The former president of Afghanistan has fled the country, and thousands of people are struggling to try and escape. Interpreters, contractors who helped the U.S. while we were there are under fire. Their lives are in danger. and it's not clear if all of them will be evacuated. So that's where we are. And I, along with a lot of people, have been trying to make sense of this. Make sense of what my service meant 11 years ago when I was there. Make sense of the men and women who died while they were over there. Make sense of the fact that after 20 years, we're right back where we started with the Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. And what I've determined is that there are times in life where we just can't make sense of things. Where there's no one right answer, no easy solve we can put on the wound, no checkbox we can check that will just make it all make sense. It's a bad situation. And sometimes Buddhism has taught me the only thing we can do reasonably is simply accept that a situation is bad and that there's little or nothing we can do about it. Now, acceptance is a part of this practice, but lament, grief, mourning is also a part of this practice. There are those who think that lament, sadness, grief is not a part of Buddhism, that we're supposed to be stone Buddhas, so to speak, that we're supposed to be calm, cool, and collected at all times, but that's not true. Buddhism has a very rich theology of lament. And to explain how it works, I'll first tell a story about something that happened to me when I was a kid. I was clumsy and adventurous, and one day, I forget if I fell out of a tree or what happened, but I hit my head. Oh, I do remember. I was playing on the monkey bars at the park, and I fell and I hit my head on the pavement, and it hurt. And I got a giant knot right here on my forehead, or a goose egg, as some people call them. It looked like I was growing horns. So I ran to my mother crying. I told her what happened. She took me home. She put an ice pack on my forehead. But if you've ever had one of these, you know there's not a ton you can do about a goose egg. Right? It just hurts for a while, and after a couple days, the swelling goes down. But I was in pain and I was embarrassed. My siblings were laughing at me. So my mom, in her compassion, wrapped me in her arms, kissed my forehead to make it better. And she just held me till I felt better. Now, I don't think there's a scientific or medical explanation for why getting a hug from mom or a kiss on the forehead makes things better, but it does. I felt better. And the reason I felt better is because my pain was being validated. I was hurt, and someone was seeing and appreciating the fact that I was hurt. They were empathizing with me. In this case, my mom. So even though she couldn't do anything about the knot on my forehead, she did do something about the pain that was associated with it. And while there is no Buddhist teaching that can fix the problem in the Middle East, fix what's happening in Afghanistan, there is a Buddhist teaching in lament which can help us deal with the suffering associated with it. We see this first in the Bodhisattva Konan, who is the Bodhisattva of compassion, the goddess of mercy, as she's sometimes called. And we chant to Konan because she is known as she who hears the cries of the world. She's the one who listens. She's the mother who gives us a hug and tells us it's going to be okay. So in my sadness and my grief, I've been spending a lot of time in front of my altar chanting to Konan. Kanzeon Namu Butsu. And in a world where bad things happen, in a world where there are times like this, where there's nothing I can do, and frankly, no one else seems to be feeling the pain I'm feeling, it helps. It's an opportunity for me to lament, to grieve, to mourn. Frankly, in a way that I'm not allowed to do in everyday society. So for those of you who are feeling grief, who are feeling helplessness in this moment, I encourage you to sit in front of your altar and to grieve, to chant, to kanan. Kanze om namu butsu. Let her wrap her arms around you. Let her give you that motherly hug. In addition to Kanan, we have the Bodhisattva Amida Buddha, who we generally don't think of when we think of lament. We generally think of him in terms of gratitude. Amida Buddha started his life off as the monk Dharmakara, who's seen the pain and suffering of the world through endless kalpas of strict Buddhist practice, create a pure land, a land of ultimate bliss, a land we go to when we die. In addition to that, Amida Buddha is the physical embodiment of our own enlightened nature, our Buddha nature. So we can understand the Pure Land as a place we go to after we die. We can also understand the Pure Land as a place that exists here on earth. And we can see that Pure Land if we purify our mind, purify our thoughts well enough that we can see it. And I've experienced this myself. There are times I look out my window and I see the Pure Land exactly as it's described in the Pure Land Sutras. With the plants with every different type of medicine, the trees hanging with 7 types of jewels, devas floating through the sky. And there are other times I look out my window and all I see is trees, clouds, puddles. Oftentimes it has to do with whether or not I've meditated that day yet. But in times like this, in times of mourning, when so many people are suffering and there's nothing we can do about it, Amida Buddha is also a place of refuge. Because in times when we can't see the goodness in the world, when we can't see our own Buddha nature, when we can't see the Buddha nature of others, Amida is the response. He is the reminder that goodness still exists in the world. It exists in us. It exists here in the United States, and it exists in Afghanistan. And the people who have been working night and day for the past 20 years to make it a better place. They exist even now as service members are risking their lives to try to get refugees out of the country. But it's hard to see that, given news like the stories I just read. So once again, this is an opportunity for us to lament, to take refuge in Amida Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu. I take refuge in Amida Buddha. And this is something else I've been doing quite a bit of the last week in front of my altar. Chanting, purifying my mind, doing everything I can to try and see that goodness that I know is there, that I've seen previously, but in the light of current events, it's just hard. And it's okay. That's the beauty of our practice, is that it's okay to admit when things are hard. It's okay to admit when we're struggling. That's why we have Kanan. That's why we have Amida. That's why we had the historical Buddha 2,600 years ago. Not because we're perfect, not because we have all the right answers, but because in moments like this, where we have no answers, we have the Buddhists to rely upon. We have mothers to give us hugs. We have fathers to offer us wisdom, to show us, hey, there's still goodness out there. And as we sit in front of our altars, as we chant, we can find, I hope, other creative ways to improve the world, to make situations better, to end suffering for all sentient beings. But in lieu of that, I'd encourage everyone watching this talk to take a moment this evening to chant and light incense, not only for ourselves, not only for all sentient beings, but especially for the people of Afghanistan, because they are suffering tremendously right now. And I don't know what else to do. Lamentations. So, that's the talk for today. I hope it was helpful. If you have comments, questions, concerns about this, what I talked about, or Buddhism in general, you can leave those in the comment section below. I promise I'll respond. And I'll just end with a few announcements. So this is Dharma Sunday. We do it every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at this channel. On Wednesdays, we have meditation and sutra study, where we do a reading from a Buddhist sutra. We sit in meditation. It's a guided meditation, 15 minutes. And then I give a Dharma talk. Not in that order. It's actually guided meditation, reading from the sutra, then Dharma talk. But please feel free to join us for that as well. So until next time, Lamentations.